He was 19, thin, quiet, invisible to everyone who passed him in the trenches. The kind of boy soldiers laughed at and dismissed as weak, clumsy, and unfit for battle. Yet there he stood with a battered rifle in his hands. A crude barrel, no scope, no training beyond what basic drills had given him. Yet the world would soon learn that the smallest misjudgment, the faintest moment of underestimation, could cost an entire unit their lives, and in just 97 days, he would take 505 Soviet soldiers from the maps, leaving behind whispers of terror and disbelief in the minds of officers and soldiers alike, the battlefield bending silently to his will, every step measured, every breath controlled, every heartbeat synced with the rhythm of war. And here's the insane part. He did it with what they called a no-scope rifle, mocked openly by his comrades who said he couldn't even hit a stationary target, and yet each shot he took found its mark, each fallen enemy a testament to a mind that worked faster, sharper and colder than any of them could imagine, the battlefield itself becoming his ally as he studied terrain. Memorized patterns, noticed the sway of leaves, the ripple of water, the flicker of shadows under morning sun, timing each bullet to perfection while the Soviets, unaware and unprepared, moved like pieces in a game he had already mastered. And as he crouched in mud, rain pelting his back, wind tugging at his coat, smoke rising from distant artillery shells, he felt a focus that bordered on obsession. Because he knew that every hesitation could cost him his life, yet he had trained himself to wait, to watch, to anticipate, to strike, and the first kill, silent, almost unnoticed by the chaos around him, sent tremors through the enemy ranks. A soldier dropped without warning, his comrades pausing, confused, searching, yet never understanding how a boy they had mocked could vanish and strike with the precision of a specter. And that day, the legend began, whispered first in disbelief, then in fear. As officers questioned their own training, their own strategies, their own understanding of warfare, while he continued unseen, unheard, calculating, observing, breathing slowly, letting every detail of the battlefield imprint itself into his mind, turning ordinary sounds, a bird's flutter, a distant scream, the creak of a sentry's boots, into signals, into calculations, into strategies that made him unstoppable. And as the sun set, casting long shadows over trenches and forests, he looked at his hands, steady, unshaking, and realized that the boy who was laughed at, the boy with the no-scope rifle, had already begun rewriting history, silently, invisibly. And the Soviets would soon learn that terror does not always come with a shout. Sometimes it comes with the cold precision of a single bullet, fired by a hand everyone thought too small, too weak, too inconsequential to ever matter, yet now mattered more than any cannon, any tank, any regiment, because his mind, his instinct, and his courage had turned him into a force that no one could predict, no one could stop. And every soldier who saw him, even fleetingly, would remember the fear of being watched by a ghost who did not need to see them to strike them down. At dawn, before the sun had broken the horizon, he moved like a shadow, slipping through mud-choked trenches, crawling under barbed wire, every step silent, every breath measured, the cold seeping into his bones, but his mind burning with calculation, knowing that every heartbeat could betray him, every twitch of a branch, every ripple in the water could be the difference between life and death. And as he surveyed the enemy camp, he saw patterns invisible to everyone else, soldiers marching in predictable rhythms, sentries pausing for the same long seconds, the wind altering the path of their bullets in subtle arcs, the distant flutter of birds betraying hidden patrols, the faint reflection of sunlight off rifle barrels hinting at positions, and each detail was absorbed, processed, and stored in a mind sharpened by focus, by observation, by the understanding that the battlefield was not chaos but a puzzle, a grid of possibilities and threats that only he could decipher. And then, when he finally raised his rifle, the first shot rang out, silent in its deadly purpose, precise, calculating, and the soldier fell. A gasp of disbelief rippling through the ranks as comrades froze, searching for the invisible hand that had struck. the first kill sending shockwaves through the unit. Whispers spreading like wildfire. Who is this boy? Who is this ghost? And yet he did not stop, because he understood that the momentary panic was a weapon as potent as his rifle. A tool to unsettle, to manipulate, to shape the battlefield to his will. And over the next hours, days, and weeks, he moved systematically, silently, as though the earth itself conspired with him. Mapping enemy routines in his mind, learning the angles, memorizing the gaps, predicting the patrols. Every movement a deadly dance with unseen consequences. And his shots rang out with terrifying regularity. The Soviets began to feel an invisible pressure, a creeping fear that no one could explain. Because every ambush they tried failed. Every countermeasure collapsed. Every step they took seemed preordained to meet an invisible predator. And he, the boy they had mocked, the one who could not hit a target according to their calculations, became the axis of their dread. Turning mundane sounds, a rustle in the bushes, the clink of equipment, a distant shout, into signals that directed his aim with terrifying precision. Each target chosen not randomly, but with cold, methodical reasoning, and as soldiers fell one by one, confusion gave way to horror, strategy to superstition. Orders frozen by disbelief, and yet he pressed on, silently, invisible, unstoppable, mastering the rhythm of war itself, learning the habits of men and soldiers and using them against them, understanding instinctively that fear is contagious, that hesitation can be lethal, that even the bravest would falter if faced with the impossible. And as the sun rose higher each day, casting long stark shadows across trenches, trees and fields, he became not just a boy with a rifle, but a force. A pattern that moved faster than thought, striking before recognition, teaching the enemy the true meaning of terror without ever shouting, without ever exposing himself, and with each kill, his legend grew. Whispered in tense, shouted in panic, feared in eyes that searched the horizon for a ghost that no one could see. And yet he moved through it all with unshakable calm. Every shot a puzzle solved, every silence a strategy, every heartbeat a measure of the distance between life and death. And the battlefield bent silently to the will of the boy who had been mocked, underestimated, and dismissed. The one whose mind had turned observation, patience, and courage into a weapon deadlier than any artillery. And the Soviets, unaware of how fully they had been outmaneuvered, would soon discover that terror does not always roar. Sometimes it waits, invisible, patient, and precise, and strikes without warning, leaving nothing but disbelief, devastation, and the whispered legend of a boy whose rifle needed no scope, but whose mind saw everything. His rifle was nothing extraordinary, the scope mocked and dismissed by his peers. Yet his mind became the weapon that no artillery, number tank, no battalion could ever match, a machine of calculation, instinct, and patience honed through sleepless nights and endless observation. And as he moved silently through frost-choked forests, mud-soaked trenches, and shattered villages, he memorized every contour of the terrain, every rise and fall of the earth, every shadow that could conceal a soldier, every glint of sunlight that might reveal a position. Understanding that the battlefield was not chaos but a chessboard, each enemy a piece to be anticipated, predicted, and when necessary, removed. And he calculated everything: distances, wind, direction, heartbeats, pulse rhythms, bullet drop, the rustle of leaves, the way a sentry blinked at precise intervals. The subtle twitch of a hand on a rifle all became part of a living, breathing equation that he solved in microseconds while his opponents remained blind, unaware, moving with predictable rigidity into the web of his precision. And when he raised his rifle, each shot was a decision backed by 1,000 silent observations, 1,000 tiny choices no one else could see or understand. And as soldiers fell with terrifying regularity, panic spread faster than the bullets themselves, hesitation and fear infecting the ranks, delaying movement, freezing decisions, breaking morale. While he remained calm, invisible, calculating the next shot even as the echoes of the last died away. understanding instinctively that fear itself was a weapon, and he used it like a scalpel, precise, cold, surgical, turning simple terrain and routine behavior into a deadly trap that no one could avoid. And as days turned into weeks, his kill count rose. Each number a testament not to luck, but to method, to study, to patient, obsessive mastery of every detail. And as the Soviets attempted countermeasures, they found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Every patrol intercepted, every ambush foiled before it could begin. And his army began to whisper of the boy who saw everything, predicted everything, moved through space and time with a clarity and precision that seemed impossible. Yet all the while he remained a figure shrouded in silence, unremarkable in appearance, underestimated by all, dismissed by many, and yet unstoppable. A force of nature disguised as a boy with a mocked rifle, proving that mastery of the mind, patience, and observation could make one man more lethal than an entire squadron of trained soldiers. A lesson written in blood, invisible yet undeniable. Every fallen enemy, another proof that genius often wears the most unassuming face, and that terror does not always roar. Sometimes it waits, calculates, and strikes with a precision that leaves nothing but disbelief, devastation, and whispers of the methodical, unstoppable boy who turned war itself into a game only he could win. By the third week, the Soviets had begun to grasp the terrifying reality of his existence, sending out spotters to scour the forests, doubling patrols, reinforcing trenches, and deploying snipers, but every effort was futile. Every countermeasure collapsing against the invisible precision of a mind that saw all, anticipated all, and moved with a silent inevitability. And as dawn broke each day over blood-soaked fields and shattered villages, they whispered about him in fear, a myth, a ghost, a boy whose rifle needed no scope, yet struck with the unerring accuracy of a seasoned sniper. And the death toll climbed steadily, -50, then 100. Then 200, each casualty a testament, not to brute force, but to calculation, patience, and the uncanny ability to read patterns invisible to trained soldiers and officers alike as he crouched in shadowed ditches, studied patrol rotations, calculated wind and bullet drop, tracked the faint flicker of sentries' eyes, and noted the subtle shifts in sunlight and cloud. He became an entity beyond mere human perception, bending the battlefield to his will, unseen, unheard, untouchable. A specter whose presence alone forced hesitation, slowed movements, and eroded confidence. While Soviet commanders raged at the inexplicable losses, ordering ambushes and traps, reinforcing flanks, shifting formations, yet nothing altered the inevitability of his strikes. And with every failed attempt to capture or kill him, panic grew. Superstitions whispered in tents, fear crawling through the ranks like an unseen predator, as soldiers froze, hearts pounding, eyes darting, waiting for the invisible boy with the mocked rifle to appear and claim another life. And he, patient, observant, methodical, used every mistake, every twitch, every predictable rhythm of the enemy to plan his next shot. Each action, a mini-climax, each kill reinforcing the myth. Each step forward teaching the Soviets that even the most rigid strategy is meaningless when faced with someone who can predict, adapt, and strike before recognition. And as the week turned into the next, 300 soldiers lay fallen. The laughter of his own army replaced with awe and disbelief. His name whispered in tense silence, the boy with the no-scope rifle. A legend that grew not from arrogance or cruelty, but from the terrifying precision and patience of a mind that saw the battlefield as a living puzzle and solved it one perfect, deadly move at a time, proving that true terror is not in numbers or machines, but in a single, unstoppable human force that no one expects and no one can stop. A force invisible, yet undeniable, calculated yet instinctive. A boy who had become more than soldier. He had become the embodiment of fear itself, haunting every step, every movement, every thought of the Soviets who now knew that their enemy was not a boy, not a human, but a perfect combination of patience, calculation and instinct, A ghost who struck invisibly, methodically and lethally, changing the very nature of the battlefield. The Soviets, frustrated and desperate, decided to trap him. Deploying entire battalions with machine guns ready, snipers positioned, mines laid across likely paths. And yet he moved like a shadow, unseen, anticipating every maneuver, calculating every risk with astonishing precision. And as he approached the designated ambush area, he paused, feeling the wind, listening to distant footsteps, noting every shadow and reflection, every subtle cue that the enemy left exposed. And in those critical moments, he turned what was meant to be a trap into a slaughter, exploiting the patterns, rhythms, and blind spots of the enemy. Picking off soldiers one by one with perfect timing, each shot a demonstration of his mastery, each kill sending ripples of terror through the remaining ranks. And when the first wave of 45 soldiers fell, screams echoed across the fields, panic erupted, and confusion spread like wildfire. Yet he remained calm, calculating, moving, blending with the terrain as though part of it. And when the second patrol appeared, 52 more soldiers succumbed to his precise fire, their own training and strategy undone by a boy who saw the battlefield in ways no one else could. And by the end of 97 days, the final count stood at 505 Soviets dead. Each loss a reflection not of brute force, but of intellect. Patience and instinct so finely tuned it seemed almost supernatural. In his army, initially skeptical, now realized the magnitude of what they had underestimated. Their laughter replaced with awe, disbelief, and reluctant respect. And the boy, still 19, still quiet, still underestimated, had rewritten what it meant to be a sniper, proving that one mind, one observer, one patient, calculating individual could achieve more than an entire regiment with machines, guns, and artillery. And as he finally lowered his rifle and surveyed the aftermath, he understood that every decision, every calculation, every moment of focus had mattered, that his survival and his kills had depended not on luck, but on the relentless mastery of observation, timing, and courage. And the Soviets would carry the legend of the boy with the no-scope rifle for the rest of the war, whispering his name in fear, knowing that one underestimated soldier had become an unstoppable force, invisible, deadly, and unforgettable. A ghost of the battlefield whose precision and method had turned the enemy's strength against them, rewriting history in the shadows, and leaving a lesson that would resonate through military strategy for decades to come. Never underestimate the power of one mind fully committed, fully focused, and fully fearless. Because sometimes, a single human force can achieve what armies of men and machines could not, leaving 505 fallen enemies, stunned allies, and a legend that would never fade. When the battlefield finally quieted, and the echoes of gunfire faded into distant memory, he disappeared from the front lines as silently as he had appeared, leaving behind a trail of disbelief, terror, and legend. The Soviets never knowing exactly how many had survived by pure luck, his own army whispering his name with a mix of awe, fear, and reluctant admiration, some mocking him still, but most understanding at last that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a phenomenon that defied conventional understanding of warfare because one boy underestimated, armed with nothing more than a mocked rifle and an unshakable mind, had reshaped the course of skirmishes, patrols, and entire battalions, taking 505 enemy lives in just 97 days, each shot calculated, each move precise, each moment measured with the patience, observation, an instinct of a force that seemed supernatural, yet was painfully human. And as he stepped away from the chaos, blending back into ordinary life, unseen, unknown, unheralded, the world outside the war would never recognize the quiet genius who had turned the battlefield into a chessboard only he could master, teaching a timeless lesson that strategy, patience, and intellect can outweigh brute force, that one determined individual can change outcomes that armies of men and machines cannot, and that legends are born not from appearances or status, but from courage, focus, and an unwavering belief in one's own ability to see what others cannot, leaving the memory of the boy with the no-scope rifle as a haunting reminder that invisibility can be more powerful than recognition, silence more deadly than noise, and one underestimated mind more fearsome than an entire enemy regiment. And for every soldier, commander, and historian who would study his story, the lesson would remain. The battlefield has no mercy, but brilliance can bend it. Precision can conquer it, and a single human, underestimated and overlooked, can leave a legacy that no war, number general, no army can ever erase. A ghost who struck with perfect timing, invisible and unstoppable, whose 505 kills in 97 days are a testament to the terrifying power of skill, patience, and mind over might, a story that would be whispered in awe for decades, remembered not only for the lives he ended, but for the fear, respect, and legend he left behind. And as the world moved on, he vanished into history, unseen but unforgettable, proving that sometimes the smallest, quietest figure on a battlefield can become the deadliest force anyone has ever faced.